Hey guys, what's up? So sorry that my lighting's dark at the moment, but my camera kind of sucks and it's nighttime right now. So I wanted to talk today about a little bit about the experiences that I've had, as well as that of some of the others, about going home after spending a long time living abroad, and also about dealing with reverse culture shock. So I'm going to share my experience and then talk a little bit about that of a couple of my friends about how they've dealt with going home after spending a long time living overseas. So I was abroad for 3 years, traveling in various different places. Most of that time I spent in Thailand before I went back to the UK last summer, and I spent just over 2 months back in the UK over the summertime before I came out here to Italy. So my experiences of going back to the UK seem to kind of parallel that of a lot of people who've gone back to their country after spending a long time abroad. And reverse culture shock is a very real thing in the same way that culture shock is when you go abroad. So I went back in July, and initially the first thing I felt was very excited. Even though I didn't like England for a long time, I was very excited when I actually did go to England after living in Thailand for a long time. I was excited to have all my favorite foods again. I was excited to see my family and my friends and the place that I lived for a number of years and just see something different again. So I was pretty excited to go back to England before I got back there. And when I finally arrived, I felt pretty cool. I was happy to see my friends again, to go to my old pubs that I used to like going to, and eating bangers and mash and Weatherspoons burgers and loads of Indian food. And I was pretty happy just to see my friends again and see my family again and everything. So initially I felt good in the same way that when you go abroad to start with, you're amazed at the novelty of it and everything. And I was particularly excited just to be in like a developed country again, because after spending a long time in Thailand where everything's really chaotic and crazy, it was quite cool to be somewhere that's clean and organized and efficient and everything. And also just a place where you're not a visually obvious foreigner. Like in Thailand, white people are obviously kind of excluded from society in a way. Like foreigners generally are considered as unequals, considered different. Whereas in England, like anyone can blend in straight away. So I was quite happy and quite excited to be back in England to start with. And that excitement lasted for a couple of weeks until I started, the novelty wore off, so to speak, and I started feeling a bit kind of restless. Particularly because I was in a long distance relationship at that time, so I was looking for all different means to bring my partner to me and to start our life in Europe. And I got pretty restless, and I wanted to travel again, and I wanted to make some money, and I yeah, I felt a bit like um, underwhelmed, shall I say, a bit underwhelmed at everything, because everything at home was exactly the same as it was when I left, and that's something that's really weird, that you never notice when you live there and you never leave, but you do when you go away for a long time. It's almost like everything freezes in time. When I was back in England, the same people worked in the same shops, and the same people were on the street, and you go to the pub and it's the same people in the same old bar, and it's like nothing has changed, and you feel like something's different, and you can't quite pinpoint what's different because everything's the same. But then you realise the thing that's different is you. You're the one that's changed. And I felt that, and I immediately felt like I'd gone back in time almost, or like done so much in the world, and then suddenly I was back. I was like a kid again, and I was really underwhelmed at everything, and I felt like I needed to get away again. And my living arrangements were not good because I was staying with my family, my parents again, and I love my parents, I love my family, but when you're 26-year-old adult and you've been abroad and you've travelled the world and you've had all this independence for such a long time, to suddenly go back to living with your mum and dad again is pretty demoralising. So I didn't have a job, and I was struggling to find a job, even with my experience of teaching in Thailand. As it turns out, back in a native English speaking country, TEFL is pretty much worth nothing, having teaching on your CV. So I was unemployed at that time, and I was looking for a job, and I was just looking for any kind of means to an end, as well as trying to maintain a long distance relationship and plan for the future. So it became very, very stressful. It became a very stressful time when I was back in the UK. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to stay in the UK or whether I wanted to go abroad again. I mean, deep down, I did want to go abroad again, but as well as that, I wanted to kind of make some money for myself, and I felt like I couldn't do that teaching English overseas. So anyway, yeah, time goes on, and I was there for a while. I found a job housekeeping in a hotel, part-time, 2 days a week, which is a big step back from teaching English abroad full-time and being independent. And it was good fun. Like, I really enjoyed the people I worked with there in that hotel. My co-workers there were really nice. I got that job through one of my friends back at home. He managed to set me up with that job. So that was something. I felt like I was doing something for myself, but it did feel like a big step back from living abroad and being independent and everything, to just having 2 days a week work, cleaning people's bed sheets in a hotel for minimum wage. And I started to basically kind of go into depression and get like reverse culture shock. Like, I was underwhelmed at England, and England was exactly the same as it was when I left, and it was very difficult to describe. So I felt one thing was that I was like back in a small town, and I was like a big person but in a small place. I was back with my family. I'd lost all my independence. I felt like a kid again. And I felt like nobody understood me, because most of my friends back at home have not travelled quite as much as I have. A lot of people back home have not travelled as much as I have, and I really almost felt like I had nothing in common with my fellow countrymen, which it's a very, very strange feeling. It's like you don't belong anywhere. And eventually, I found this opportunity to come and teach out in Italy, and I was pretty hesitant because at the same time I was looking for something more substantial back in England. But then I realised, A, Italy is basically my dream country. Like, Italy is somewhere I've always wanted to stay in, and B, this job in Italy was an immediate job offer. It wasn't like a chance of something. It was like I could be independent again, I could be sufficient again, I could be back overseas. Even though the salary's not good, I felt like I could be myself again, which is, as funny as it seems, I feel best and I feel most at home when I'm away from home, which is kind of a ironic feeling. And this is shared by a couple of my friends. So I asked a couple of my friends over Facebook about their experiences of living overseas as well. One of my friends, I won't mention her name because she didn't want me to mention her name on it. She told me that she went back home after being in Thailand. She was someone that I knew back in Thailand who was teaching there. She went back home 3 years ago, and ever since then she's never felt like she's belonged, and she says she felt depressed. And to sum it up perfectly, better than I could have ever described, she felt like she was a big fish in a small pond. And she is currently looking at moving away from her country as soon as possible, because she's basically pretty depressed back there. Another one of my friends, she was happy to go back to the UK. She spent a good couple of years in Spain, Italy, and Portugal. I can't remember exactly how long she said. I think it was 2 years or a year and a half she was abroad in total, and she was happy to go back to the UK. She says going back home made her more aware about her home. She was happy to be back with her family again, and she met her now husband back in the UK. She got a good job secured. So some pointers is, if you're going to go back home after you've been teaching abroad or being living abroad for a while, make sure you know what to expect. Home is basically going to be the same as it was when you left. Sure, some of your friends' lives will have changed. People might have got married or had a kid or got a new job, but the place itself is going to be exactly the same as it was when you left it. So don't go expecting it to be too much. Don't expect everyone to care about your travel experiences, because as amazing as your travel experiences are, most people in your hometown just kind of have no comprehension of what it's like to do that, and they're probably not going to be that interested. They'll pretend to be interested, but they're probably not really going to be that interested in it. Also, make sure that you have a backup plan or a sort of a job plan to go into, because the worst thing is going back home after being abroad and being back dependent on other people, dependent on your family, and not having a job or anything productive to do with your time, because it can really make it hard to adapt to being back home when you've got no plan and no job and everything's kind of up in the air. I especially felt like my blow was softened a bit just because I was there over the summertime, and the weather in England at the summertime was pretty good last year. So that kind of made it a little bit easier to deal with, but I could only imagine how hellish it would have been if I went back over the winter. So yeah, that was a bit about my experience of when I was back in the UK last year. And for the time being, I don't really have any immediate plan to go and live in England again. I'll definitely go and visit there again, because obviously all my family are there now. So I'll definitely go back and visit and maybe try and make some money over at some of the English camps there. But I have no real interest in ever living there again. I enjoy Italy. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about what it's like when you go back home after living abroad, maybe you're teaching abroad at the moment, maybe you're an expat and your contract is soon to be running out and you're basically destined to go home soon, yeah, ask me some questions. Or if you're someone who has already gone home and you just want to talk a bit about your experiences, sure, feel free to hit me up on my email or in my comment section below, and I'll be more than happy to see you. So cheers, and see y'all later.